pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam.
President Trump is trying to sow chaos across America. He has done exactly that.
And welcome back to Square Off. That face-off between President Trump and the cities, states, nonprofits over his administration's freeze on trillions of dollars in federal grants and aid lasted less than 24 hours. Trump's team walked it back, but should cities and states still be concerned about losing money that pays for vital services, police, fire, Medicaid, and more? Joining us to discuss week 2 of the second Trump term are Marcus DelArtino, Republican consultant at First Strategic Communications and Public Affairs, and Roy Herrera, a Democratic campaign and elections attorney at the Herrera Arellano law firm. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thanks, Bram.
Thanks. Just like week 1, week 2 felt like a month. The horrific aircraft disaster over the Potomac just seemed to cover everything in a dark shroud. President Trump, tried to lead the nation in that moment afterwards. Roy, what was your takeaway from how President Trump responded to the tragedy?
Well, first of all, I mean, it is tragic. As someone who flies to D.C. into DCA every month, my heart goes out to everybody that was affected by it and the victims, of course. And to answer your question about Trump's reaction, I don't think it was particularly empathetic, right? I mean, I think he got up there and basically started blaming things like DEI, for example, that there is no evidence that had any connection to what happened. In fact, I'm pretty sure it didn't. Instead of taking the time to express, his sympathies and a commitment to get to the bottom of it. So to me, it felt like Trump always is, where he's searching for, a potential scapegoat as opposed to, expressing any kind of human feeling.
Is this the way Trump always is, or is this a new level, a different level?
First of all, I don't think everything that happens in the world needs a presidential comment. But that's the world that we live in now, and I think that people are expecting him to comment on virtually everything. The initial statement was great, and then about 3 minutes after that, it sort of starts to fall apart. And, generally when he goes off script, he gets into trouble. And I think that that's, certainly a case here. I would have said, frankly, if I were president, the question belongs at the Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense, and NTSB. But it's not up to the president to make a comment on this.
All right. A war on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, was brought up in his comments, and it seems to infuse so much of their policy, including, this freeze on federal funds. It was one of the underpinnings for that. What was the potential impact of this freeze here in Arizona?
Well, I mean, the impact, and I think, he did rescind the initial OMB memo, and the whole thing was sort of rolled out in a very incompetent fashion and chaotic, but it's intentional chaos. And I say that to say that this is going to come back. I mean, it is clear that I think this president wants to continue with these kinds of freezes. I think it's all part of a larger sort of legal fight he wants to wage on the powers and extent of executive authority. And so I think he's going to keep trying. And so, the answer is that any funds that go to, I think, the most needy are going to be in question going forward. Certainly, he wants to go after all the DEI stuff, he has said. And then, of course, the Green New Deal, which, that really means investments through the Inflation Reduction Act for clean energy technology, for example. These are investments that in Arizona are significant and planned for the future of the state. And so these things are going to come back. And I think it's going to take a lot of the local elected officials and local leaders to push back and say that these things are absolutely necessary. We need to be able to pay for housing and Medicaid and things like that.
It was quickly rescinded. Attorney General Chris Mays still had time to file a lawsuit, her second in 2 weeks, against Donald Trump. What about that? What should cities, the state, our universities, which get tens of millions of dollars in federal grants, should they be on their toes right now evaluating their policies on DEI, climate issues?
Sure. I think when you look at these executive orders, I mean, he's signaling and messaging, here's where we're going in the next 4 years. And when you look at what he's going to ask Congress to do, I think we're headed down that path. But, I've been saying this for years, and I think that it's kind of coming home to roost. When you look at the amount of money that we're spending on debt payments to China, on entitlement spending, we virtually almost have no budget left. And so at some point, America's got to get serious about getting their budget deficits under control. and that in itself would strengthen the economy. And I think that that's part of the signaling he's doing with some of these EEOs.
It's the signaling, but is this the way to do it based on policies you don't like? I'm going to take this money away from you.
Well, I think what he, I think when you look historically through his actions, what he generally does is goes huge announcement up front, and then we sort of scale it back from there. And so I would say down that road, it's not going to be as brutal and brutal as it may appear. I think we're looking at some sort of compromise that scales back the size of government and gets us on solid economic footing.
All right. I want to move to a disturbing story on the Arizona State University campus. One of the campus's Republican student groups, College Republicans United, plan to staff a table on campus urging fellow students to snitch on illegal immigrants at ASU, possibly including DACA students who are lawfully present in this country. Is this one more symbol of this new Trump era, snitching on your fellow man and woman?
Sadly, it is. And, sort of the irony to me is, particularly someone who's raised Catholic, it's not particularly Christian to me as an idea or as a theology. But I think it is somewhat the new era. I think, Trump has signaled and almost have given a permission structure to people to go after others that they think are undocumented. I think it's racist. I think it's unfair. And of course, ASU, I think my view would be needs to ensure that it is a safe place for everyone that goes there. And they don't look over their shoulder, worried about the fact that someone is going to come and round them up. I have no doubt that in this past election, Arizonans and Americans signaled that they want increased immigration enforcement. I think that's very clear. But there's a big difference between increased common sense immigration enforcement and then doing things like this, going after dreamers, doing mass deportation, rounding people up in churches, in gathering places in schools. I don't think those are the things that Arizonans want. And so if these kinds of things happen, I think there will be a backlash because that's ultimately seen as un-American and un-Arizonan.
Are they getting the green light from Trump to do this?
I mean, I grew up in an era of snitches get stitches, so I don't know if I'm the best to comment on this, but here's what I think the president's been pretty clear about this. He wants to go after illegal aliens that are in this country committing unlawful acts. That is the top priority. It is, frankly, it's not students going to ASU. And so I would think that, that's a 4-year job just in itself to work on those people that are in the country illegally committing illegal acts. So we've got there's plenty of runway to go to get to DACA students who are in the country legally. Going to school legally.
All right, we'll wait and see. Finally, good news. Former U.S. Senator Kyrsten Sinema has landed a job in this tough job market. She's one of several big-name advisors, including Donald Trump's campaign manager, who are going to be advising cryptocurrency promoter Coinbase. Can she do this? As a senator, is she going to be able to lobby? What can she do?
Well, there are restrictions, for former senators for a period of time to lobby. Of course, you see a lot of ex-senators go to different companies, serve on boards, and technically they're not lobbying because they're not doing sort of the direct outreach to their fellow senators, but they can advise, and I imagine that's what this is going to be. And of course, this isn't going to be particularly surprising to people. I think we all thought she was eventually going to land a job in industry. And of course, my client, the new Senator Ruben Gallego, who obviously I was his counsel for the campaign, ironically, is going to be the ranking member on the digital currency subcommittee in the Senate, which is a brand new subcommittee. So all of the crypto policy is going to go through that committee. So that's going to be very interesting.
Good job for her.
I think it's a great job. I mean, she can do. My biggest takeaway is the American people need to get a grip and an idea how much money this crypto industry is spending influencing politics, both nationally and at the state. So that always gets my ear up, and I'm wondering, there's more to this business than meets the eye.
Biggest spender in 2024. Marcus DeLartino, Roy Herrera, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you.